The Glass Hammer by K.W. Jeter. That's the book we're talking about today, as you probably saw from the title. It's a beautiful morning, and I got some coffee. I read this book in like 3 days, kind of randomly. I finished Lonesome Dove and was kind of just like scanning my shelves looking for something fun to read. I picked this copy up. This is a signet. From a library sale for 50 cents. And I remember looking at it when I was at the library sale going, dang, that looks really cool. I barely recognize KW Jeter, but I need to just like pocket this. And I kind of pocketed that in my mind. And I'm glad I did. Um, KW Jeter, I don't have a screen in front of me. I'm not looking this up, but I did a bit of research on him. Tried to. He was the protege of Philip K. Dick, an author that probably all of you know, or most of you know. Um, did I mean, obviously, this is marketed as a cyberpunk, but he did um, some interesting horror, some cyberpunk. Even though apparently he didn't really read cyberpunk or label himself as a cyberpunk writer, but he was an interesting author who I think is not very widely known or talked about. Maybe this corner of BookTube you get a little bit of play, but he is far too talented to not be discussed more, at least. You know, Philip K. Dick's bibliography is much more extensive, but if you're looking for just kind of a similar flavor with some harder edge at times, Glasshammer, and I just ordered a copy of Dr. Adder, which I know some of you might be familiar with. That was his book before this one, in kind of the one that got him national attention. Um, it was that one actually. Just before I jump into the review on this one, was published I think over 10 years after he wrote it, because nobody would take it because of how like intense and graphic it was. People just didn't want it from an unproven writer. And so once he finally got it published, then he became kind of I guess he seems like that cult following type of writer where a small group who have read him and given him a try really love his books passionately. And I think it's safe to say, after reading The Glass Hammer, book two in the Dr. Adder trilogy, um, they're not super related. They're just in the same kind of world, I think. But after reading this book, I can say that I'm probably one of those people now who really, really likes his work and is going to seek it wherever I'm shopping for books. If I can find his work, it's scarce. I'm going to get it. Okay, let's get into the review because I've kind of talked about him, the author. This book is just like, I thought of it as typical cyberpunk for the first couple chapters, but it really takes some turns. It focuses a lot on ego, our relationship to technology, and its like ability to our attachment to television and like entertainment, and a lot of like religious themes are in here that really stuck out. We have a man named Schuler. That's how I'm going to pronounce it. I hope that's correct. Ross Schuler, and he drives cars. As you can see on the cover, they're sprint cars, and they drive across the desert in Arizona to Los Angeles, or from Los Angeles to Arizona. In the desert, they transport these RH chips, which are essentially the closest thing we have to like computer autonomy. Um, Not really artificial intelligence, but kind of. And they're like black market chips. And on top of that, we have a production studio. Think of it like, your CBS's, your ABC's, called Speed Death Productions, that create a TV show based off of these sprint car racers. The TV show is not like a Jersey Shore. I'm going to show some clips and then I'm going to cut to you. It's like following you 24/7. We're going to cut up the footage however we see fit. it's like deeply disturbing reality TV. And I'll get to that in a little bit because I think that that's one of the best themes, one of the best explorations um, of ideas in this book is the fact that this was published in like, I think it was 85, 84. Let's just look really quick so I can get it right. 85. Um, yeah. So in 1985, 31 years ago, no, 31. Gosh, my math sucks. 15 plus 26, 41 years ago. Holy cow. Sorry, it's early and I have yet to have any coffee. Coffee's good. I can do math now. Um, Over 40 years ago, I think it's interesting that he predicted a lot of really interesting things that go on in this book about our our tie to like more intense television and connection to the characters that we see in our television shows because um, it like essentially starts a religious movement. And more on that in just a minute because I don't want to spoil a ton, but that's kind of the setup of the plot where Ross Schuler drives cars. He's followed around by a camera crew, really just one camera. That's pretty cool. And then yeah, we kind of see his backstory threaded throughout through the use of television and like his biopic um, being told on TV. Really, really cool like format. I'll note this before I kind of like talk about deeper plot spoilers, but the format of the book is it's written kind of just like your typical prose, and then you get into um, and I mean like what's on the actual page. Let me see if I can open it up. There will be these interstitial like shots, descriptive shots, like almost like um, a TV script or a movie script. Let me get it up here. See if I can find like a whole page on it. So I don't want to open the spine too much and crack the spine because I've been able to keep the book really nice. But as you can see, kind of up top here, there's just it's your normal text, and then oh no, what happened to my mic? Oh, my mic's still going. I pray you can hear me right now. I think you can. I accidentally hit my button. Anyway, it goes into like a script format. That was such a clunky way to describe that. I apologize. Um, but I thought that was a really interesting choice by Jeter because you get to almost like relive flashbacks through Schuler's life and hear, you get a lot of character context from that because you see what happened previously to the characters, and then you keep jumping back to the present where stuff is happening now. um, with that, spoilers ahead, so if you haven't read this book and you don't want to be spoiled, please pause the video and please return to it later if if you are so inclined, if you read it, because I'm really looking forward to discussing kind of the deeper plot things in this. um, the religious imagery that goes on in this book is fascinating to me. We have a group called the God Friends. We have a church that Schuler was a part of and then excommunicated from called the Cathedra Novum. Um, and I think Jeter does not seem to be a practicing believer of the Christian faith in this book because I think a lot of the themes written around that like his I don't think he's like channeling his opinions through it, but I do think a deeper resonating theme through this was that um there's I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna put the cart ahead of the horse. It's kind of like wasting your time for something that ultimately you permit your life to this, not permit your life, but you submit your life to this work, and then you find out it to be a lie. That kind of is the whole plot of the book. Another character, Bishovsky, that Schuler meets and is one of his like best friends, um, sort of a mentor, kind of. Uh, Hint, hint. I think some people online have talked about how that's supposed to be Philip K. Dick, that character, Dolph Bishovsky, as the mentor of Schuler. But No, he works on he has this like project that he's working on, not Schuler but Bishovsky, um, that is essentially like exploring and analyzing stained glass windows from a super old church, and it's in like the second third of the book, or the last third of the book, you find out like that it could be all like um, a setup just to get him to waste his time on it, essentially. So I think that, man, Sam's barking. Um, I think that was one of the interesting themes about the religious aspect is Jeter was trying to channel, I think, some of that through Bishovsky's like situation with his project. I don't know if you can hear it, but Sam's barking like crazy. I'm gonna wait for him to pass a little bit because he's just going off. We live next to a trail that runs, and a lot of people walk their dogs and or just take walks. And Sam likes to patrol the back fence, as you may have seen in other videos of mine. Um, so essentially, what Schuler in the present is just hurtling further and further towards like annihilation. Essentially, um, he it's a kind of complicated, complex plot because we keep flashing back. In the past, we learn that Schuler grew up in the church. He continuously kind of was not, he just pushed back against it and was excommunicated. Um, and he is sent on a train to what he thinks is LA. And meanwhile, he stops. This is all in the past. He's kind of let off at this place called Eureka Station, which is just a hopeless, frozen wasteland on the West Coast. I guess weather patterns have kind of changed. There are futuristic tech. There's futuristic tech that can kind of like create weather zones, and they're in the freezing cold, like tundra, where you can die of hypothermia. Um, he's dropped off at this place. His dreams are crushed because he's like, finally, I got out of the church, and now I have to spend my life in this like basically like frozen village of nothing. And he meets a woman on the train while he's headed to what he thought was LA, named Synth, who is essentially the love interest in this, but it's way deeper than that because she is among the group called the God Friends, and they are like they're thought of as lesbians because they're not supposed to have sex with men, but they are just their religion forces them, essentially their ideology, to not bear children, i.e., don't engage in intimate acts with men. Otherwise, you could bring forth the son, or the you could bring forth God. Sort of like, I don't know if it's exactly the second coming. It kind of is referenced like that, where it's just like this is going to be the reincarnation of Jesus, so to speak. Um, and so, fast forward a little bit, they escape Eureka Station because of a giant explosion, and but they're in the middle of frozen nothingness, and they're about to, him and Synth clearly have a attraction for each other and a love for each other that's um it's I think it's kind of a what's the like they're trauma bonded a little bit, uh, perhaps, and they essentially have a child, and that's how they're found in the tundra, because they engaged in that intimate act, and the God Friends knew that was happening, and they're like, you're going to be the mother of God now. And the son, Lumen, is seen as God. He's still a child in modern day. So we're going to fast forward to modern day, where the reason that Schuler is so popular among these sprint car TV shows is a woman named Endrix, who is of Speed Death Productions, is essentially creating like a biography, a biopic of him, and episode by episode is rolling it out to the public. The thing that interests the public about it is they think that he is the father of God, and that he has supernatural protection from um, the sprint car races. I kind of forgot to mention, in these sprint car races, missiles are being shot at them through like old military satellites, and the sprinters and their co-pilots. I don't know why I did this for sprinters. The sprinters and their co-pilots, which are little like radios that are using those chips I said. So like imagine like an AI radio that's talking to them. They dodge these missiles, and it's very dangerous and high octane, and it's just it's Fast and Furious. It's Death Race. It's the race in Spy Kids 3 where they, you know what I'm talking about if you're my age. It's supposed to just be entertaining, like mindless entertainment, but they start exploring Schuler's backstory in this biopic that Hendrix is creating. One cool aspect of the camera work was she has this thing called the shadow that is a single camera that spiders around and can get any angle. Um, they can pretty much capture everything through the shadow, and it was a really interesting and kind of like panopticon adjacent type of tech that I thought was again way ahead of its time. Where the kind of all-seeing eye of this thing, it can pick you up anywhere, saying anything, and much like our phones nowadays, I think the technology is creepy and crazy. And he predicted this in a way long before it was taking place. I know other writers did too. It wasn't just like an epiphany that Jeter had. But I think this book was way ahead of its time. I'll keep talking about that more in just a minute. But um, essentially, the shadow follows him around in these races. Uh, Hendrix is trying to captivate and create an audience through the biopic, and it all just comes hurtling into a giant crash at the end where Schuler tries to essentially wreck his car and either get blown up and die or prove that he doesn't have this, like they call it, whatever protection he has. I can't remember the term for it. The God protection that he has from being the father of God. And he, I think he just, he knows that there's not really a way out at the end. And so it's a really kind of sad and um, tragic ending. Not kind of, it is. He kills Hendrix. Um, he goes to see his son at the very end, and him and his son just kind of like agree. And his son's like, I think, been brainwashed by these God friends to think that he's God. So he's this 5-year-old that like thinks he's God. Crazy. And they go off into the cold and freeze and die, and that's the end of the book. And I just was like really thrown off by that because it not that I was expecting a happy ending. I think just in general, cyberpunk is pretty hopeless in a way. A lot of it is, but it offers this sense of like the one hope I saw from it was it's almost like Schuler's like, I'm not going to let them win. I know I'm not the father of God. I know my kid's not the father or not God. And Synth, the mother of Lumen, the kid, um, she doesn't think he's God either. So they all kind of are just like, we're not going to let this crazy religion win and the crazy speed death production control win. And they sort of take matters into their own hands and go out into the freezing tundra and die. So like hopelessly hopeful. I don't know if that's a contradiction of that's complete contradiction. But I don't know. The themes were complex. They were really fun to explore. It's a unique piece of cyberpunk that I feel like I haven't read a ton of cyberpunk, but Neuromancer really ignited this spark in my head that just really likes that era of writing. I've gone to just pick up as much as I could from that era because it's not super common to find. I think people really do hold on to their stuff from Jeter and Gibson, Rudy Rucker, Lewis Shiner, those kind of authors, Bruce Sterling. They're not as common to find, and they're more recent too. I mean, these were published in the 80s and early 90s and stuff. But I'm super glad I read this book. I was blown away by it. It wasn't a perfect novel. It wasn't quite um, the absolute masterpiece that Neuromancer is. But if you're into cyberpunk, uh, find a Jeter book. I'd just say find a Jeter book and read it, because he's got um, this really. I'm trying to figure out the like. It's such a searing edge to his prose and unflinching, um, like narration tactic that just sends you forward, and you just feel like you're hurtling towards the end. It was such a fast read. It was such a fun and interesting read. It kept me thinking. It kept me, excuse me, paying attention. And I think some of the best books in all of literature, they do both. They develop characters and they keep you paying attention. They explore themes while also making you care for the characters. The character work is good. I wouldn't say it's great, but the themes and the exploration of ideas are phenomenal. Um, yeah, I I want to make one more note, because I know I'm probably going to put something about PKD in either the title or the thumbnail. Um, Probably helps people to be interested and click on it, I guess. I don't know. Um, I think Jeter's relationship to Philip K. Dick isn't super widely like publicized, but I do believe that he looked up to Philip and something in my throat. Um, um, I think that really sets the tone for Jeter's writing, where he was writing in his own style, but he also was clearly influenced by PKD's like, um, what is reality? Let me explore some real deep theological and psychological themes. Um, what do you do when you're like, what does a character do when they're put under tremendous pressure and stress? Um, yeah, I don't know. It's that kind of writing, and I think he did a wonderful job. If Bishovsky, the character in this book, is kind of an homage uh, to PKD, he did a really good job. The end of the book, the like closing, each chapter is called segment one, segment two, segment three, and then there's a one page closing at the very end. Um, that it kind of makes it a little bit mysterious as to like, were we watching a TV show this whole time? Because it says like, essentially the tape finished, and the mic couldn't pick up what they were saying, and it's real mysterious and vague. But I think that it was an allusion to, Philip K. Dick's relationship with Jeter, and how like it's there's still stuff that they can, like, being out in the public as writers. I'm sure people like commented and talked about them, but I think that it's like a sort of, we can still keep things to ourselves. Um, I don't know. Now that I say it, I don't know if that's exactly what it was, but it's called The Closing. Just going to read it for you. So if you read the book, or if you're interested in this portion, just help me understand, I guess, if you know. It says, the last tape ended. He sat for a moment watching the blank screen, then reached down and sorted through the pile. He found the one he wanted and dropped it in the playback unit. On the screen, another space formed, a space lit by the colors of a rose window, time and memory, and in it two figures, his past and the broad-shouldered, gray-bearded friend. That's Bishovsky. Video. Close up. Bishovsky speaks something close to Schuler's ear. You can't hear what he said. The voice comes from behind him. From the other, whose presence in real time keeps passing out of mind. The mic didn't pick it up. It doesn't matter. He leans close toward the screen, hearing the whisper recorded only in the heart. To me, that was like Bishovsky saying something to Schuler that only they can hear, because everything is recorded in this, but somehow they get away with not recording it. So it was kind of is an intimate moment of sensitivity between, I think, Jeter and Philip K. Dick, if Bishovsky is an homage to him. So I don't know. Just conjecture. I don't think I've ever seen it confirmed online, as I did some research for this book, but I hope I was able to convey my thoughts well. This was a really wild ride and a really fun read. I hope you find more Jeter. I like I said, I ordered a copy of Dr. Adder. Um, and it will be getting here soon, and I'm probably going to start reading it here soon. But we'll see. I have a couple of projects in mind that I'm working on. One big one that we'll see if I'm up to the task. Book projects, I mean. Um, and I've realized I put several bookmarks in here to read a couple passages. Really short passages. There was a quote early on from Endrix, the Speed Death Productions lady, that says, "We do our best." She coolly fielded the comment. "People live in episodes, on video at least, so that's what we give them." I thought "people live in episodes" was a really interesting way to describe things, because I think nowadays, especially nowadays, with how much technology and communication we just have constantly at our fingertips, people just live in episodes. Each day, they are the main character of their own world. And we just see things weirdly through the lens of television and of social media. And it was seen 40 years prior, through this book. Another one, I'm trying to remember what this one was. Um, what did I do for this one? Sorry. I feel like I don't remember why I put a thing from this. And what was this one? Oh, this was when Bishovsky kind of realizes that his life's work, essentially on this, um, stained glass, this rose-colored window that you heard there at the end, uh, could be meaningless. It says, let's see, all for the glory of the church, right? But now it's a different deck of cards that's been handed to him, Bishovsky. A much bigger deck, and one that possibly invalidates everything that he's thought and done before. I know the feeling, Schuler kept the thought to himself. Instead, he said aloud, I imagine that would get to you. So, again, kind of this notion of all my life I've been doing this thing and I've been lied to the whole time. I think that sort of channels the religious themes in this book, at least from what Jeter was trying to convey. And I thought he did it really well. Side note, like, I guess in relation to that, since I am a believer and I'm a Christian, I think that was interesting to read and explore. I'm always interested in that kind of thing in fiction, because it's a space for people to explore things like that and ideas. And I think it's, um, yeah, it's just interesting, and it's something that I like to read, as long as it's not ham fisted and kind of overly obvious that you're just trying to poke at religion or poke at faith or whatever. I think he did this. He did that in a very nuanced and creative way, where he was trying to convey themes, and he did it like really smartly and wonderfully. So um, I won't keep going, because I tend to kind of ramble in some of these videos, and I think they get long, and I don't know if you guys actually watch for 20, 25, 30 minutes if I spend that long. But yeah, that was The Glass Hammer by KW Jeter. uh, this has been Dad Like Book, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you.